Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. On this week's docket, Strickland and Dawson. Don't invite them to a party. Those guys are spoilers. Will the Undisputeds hang on to their straps this weekend? And who is on your Mount Rushmore of UFC welterweights? We'll get to that at the end, so start getting yours ready. Much, much more as well. All right, hello, everyone. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me, as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. Joining me this week, Danny Segura. He's in the 305. He's in Miami, SoFla, whatever you want to call it. He always rings it. The SGC creator goes here in Sin City. He's my co-host on Junkie Radio. And Farah Hanoun, the three-point champ. She graces us all the way from Cairo. Cold coffee's on the ones and twos. Let's get to it. So Sean Strickland, he defeated Abus Magomedov in the main event at UFC on ESPN 47. In his post-fight interview, he stated he wanted a title shot. In fact, he says he's earned it. Come on, UFC, throw him a bone. Are you in or are you out? Danny, you get the first take of the week.
I'm out. Completely out. I mean, look at UFC 290. We got Robert Whittaker returning against Dricus Du Plessis. That fight should determine the next challenger for Israel Adesanya. Depending on the result, if it's Dricus Du Plessis, I think we got an obvious answer. But I would even say, even if Robert Whittaker wins, look, he'd beat Dricus obviously, and then he would have a win over Vettori as well. That weighs way more than the two victories that Mr. Sean Strickland has had since getting knocked out against Alex Pereira. So I do feel like he's got to do more. He does have one thing going for him, which is he is a fresh matchup for Adesanya. That's one thing. But outside of that, I do think he needs to do more. I think one more win, and then we're talking about a title shot. But for now, the winner of Whittaker versus Du Plessis, that's the person who should be fighting easy next.
Now, I know one can say, Danny, man, the heat between Dricus Du Plessis and Adesanya is through the roof. But remember, Strickland and Adesanya were going at it at that press conference last year. So they have some heat as well.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I guess the last image, or like the most vivid image that I have in my mind is, the Alex Pereira knockout. Strickland just getting knocked out clean by Alex Pereira. And yes, he's had two performances since, but they haven't fully erased that. So It just kind of feels like a bit too soon, in my opinion, to throw him into a title shot, just because, one, he's a fresh matchup, and two, he can just say whatever he wants on the mic and I guess have some sort of back and forth with Adesanya. No, I'll stick to my guns. I think the winner of Dricus Du Plessis versus Whittaker should be next.
All right, Fada, do you agree with Danny? In or out?
No, I do think that Whittaker and Du Plessis should be the number one contender fight. But good thing for Sean Strickland is that this fight is happening a week after he fought and he won. So, if Du Plessis wins, it seems like a no-brainer because beating Robert Whittaker is no joke. He's unbeaten in the UFC, and Adesanya wants that fight. So in that regard, do I think Whittaker deserves a shot if he beats Du Plessis? I do. But then again, the way Adesanya is talking, where he just doesn't seem too thrilled with the idea of having to fight Whittaker a third time, could play in Sean Strickland's favor. So I think Strickland had kind of the best case scenario this past weekend. And even better for him, the fact that this fight's happening this weekend, because Izzy wants to fight at UFC 293 in Sydney. It's quite soon. It would be just under a 2-month turnaround for those guys. Or sorry, a 2-month turnaround for those guys. If they do come out unscathed and they're ready to go, great. If not, Strickland will be ready to go. He wants that shot. So if I'm Sean Strickland, don't book any fights. Don't jump and take any risky fights or do the UFC any favors right now. It's a waiting game for him, in my opinion. You never know, especially with the way Adesanya is talking. He could be very well open to Sean Strickland if Du Plessis loses. But I do think that Dricus and Robert Whittaker should be the number one contender fight regardless. But again, timing is going to play a big factor in all this.
Yeah, and stay off that motorcycle, Sean. You might get the next call. Goes, how about this? I know I'm stretching things a little bit, but sometimes the champs like to throw their weight around. Couldn't he punish Dricus Du Plessis and say, hey, you won, you beat Whittaker, but I want Sean? Because remember, when you've defended 5 times, the UFC consults you. You know what I mean? Hey, who do you want, champ? So what do you think? Could that be a way of sticking it to him?
No, I don't think it could happen. I'm not saying you're crazy, but I just don't see it that way. Like, I'm kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. There's no way around it. Sean looked really good. He showed us some new wrinkles, right, in his attack. He was a little bit more aggressive when he needed to. It wasn't just the straight punches, the paper cuts that I think Laura Sanko referred to. He showed some power in there, and he did show some pretty good fight IQ. And don't forget, his vision was kind of messed up from the get-go, just seconds into it. So it was an impressive performance, but the way the UFC's been handling this, it's been really, really confusing. So it's hard to really even say that you could stick to one thing. I mean, that's the one thing the UFC doesn't do. Promises don't really mean much. Dricus, yeah, with a win, I think there's just no way around that one. There is a little bit of heat, but at the same time, like you guys made good points, Sean Strickland can create more heat with Israel Adesanya. They've already got it. It's easy to do. It doesn't take much to piss off Israel Adesanya. So, I mean, you could do something like that. It is a fresh matchup, which I think fight fans are just looking forward to more and more these days, because these pay-per-views that we're shelling out all this money for, a lot of times we're shelling out rematch. It happens a lot. And a fresh look in Sean Strickland, regardless if we feel their skill sets are up to par or not, sometimes in the situation when you have a champion that's running through a lot of people, it just kind of feels right at certain times. So I would say if one of the two, Bobby Knuckles or Dricus, doesn't play ball, or even Israel Adesanya, the way Sean Strickland is, he's always ready. He's always in the gym. Maybe you could see him jump the queue, but realistically, based on what they've said and the way things work, he probably shouldn't.
All right, good stuff. Way to handle it across the board. Please, if you are on the chat room there, if you want to participate, you can leave a question or a comment. Here's a couple. I'll see if I can get better at this. DC7 says, Sean should get the title shot. The quick turnaround for Whittaker or DDP is just the UFC doing Izzy a favor. That's not fair to Rob, but either way, Rob beats Izzy this time. So he's really forecasting ahead. Michael Joel says it's too early for Sean Strickland to get a title fight. He needs one more win before a title fight can be justified, similar to what Danny was saying. Also, just some really nice comments here. Pro Fights Info says, good to see the crew. Hope you all have a great 4th of July tomorrow. And yes, early happy Independence Day to all of you here in the United States that celebrate, obviously. And then here's another one, a nice one from Michael Joel. Hello, beautiful people. Good vibes. On behalf of Fada and myself, hello to you too. Hopefully you'll leave a nice comment for Goes and Danny later on. And let's get to the next one. All right. Grant Dawson, he defeated Damir Ismagulov in the co-main event at UFC on ESPN 47. No finish, but lots of dominance over a fighter that was favored going into the event. In his post-fight interview, he threw out a few more names for a future dance card, but eventually he dropped the champ's name too. Notably, Dawson used the game plan that the champ often uses himself. Did KGD just become a serious title contender in the lightweight division? Too soon or spot on? Fada, it's on you.
I don't know about title contender, but he's definitely in the right direction. I mean, he had a very impressive showing. He's looked very impressive. I think he's one of kind of the more underrated lightweights on the roster, especially the ones on the rise. But here's the issue with the lightweight division. So it's kind of top heavy in the sense that you've got a lot of stars. The Dustin Poiriers, the Justin Gaethjes, the Michael Chandlers. Now, kudos to Justin Gaethje. He kind of gave Rafael Fiziev a chance to catapult himself into title contention. He stifled that, and now he's rematching Dustin Poirier. Now, Michael Chandler, we've seen a lot of guys call him out, like Arman Tsarukyan. Of course, he wants the Conor McGregor fight, and I'm not saying he should let go of that. But I think with the top of the lightweight division, the issue is a lot of those guys aren't really interested in fighting down, and they kind of have that star power to do so, to not fight down, just because they're lucrative fights in terms of pay-per-view headliners, as we're seeing Poirier and Gaethje too in the BMF title. So I think for Grant Dawson, it's going to take a little bit while longer. And also lightweight is super stacked as well. But you got the Arman Tsarukyan's, the Mateos Gamrods, a lot of talented guys. You got Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker are fighting. So for Grant Dawson, I mean, he's on the right path. Maybe if he can get a fight like Rafael Dos Anjos, I mean, Dos Anjos is ranked higher than him, and he's a big name. I'm sure. I actually might be mistaken, but he might have told you guys before in an interview that he would like that fight. It would be something that interests him. So, yeah, give him somebody like that. He's higher ranked than him, and at the same time, it will help him climb up. But right now, I think it's just tough because of the landscape of lightweight. These guys are so talented, and they're such big names that sometimes it's hard for them to be interested in fighting a Grant Dawson, and that's obviously no disrespect to Dawson. It just would be a risky fight. So on the right path, looking very, very good. Hopefully for his sake, he can get somebody ranked higher than him, but title picture, not yet.
Fada, basically, I think what you're saying is you have no problem with the 21-1 overall and the 9-1-1. I believe he's in the UFC. He just hasn't beaten that name, that top 5, top 10 name. Is that kind of what he's lacking? Is that what you're saying?
it's going to be hard for him to get that name, was what I was trying to say, just because like the lightweight division has a lot, like more so than most of the other division. Like these are massive stars. These are guys that draw really,
Yeah.
really big for the UFC. So they're always going to be involved in these big fights. And it's going to be a lot easier for the Poiriers, the Gaethjes to get another title shot, even though they fell short recently, just because of their resumes and who they fought and their accolades and stuff. So it'll be hard for Grant Dawson to get one of those names. Like I said, credit to Gaethje for giving Fiziev an opportunity. But just right now, if maybe a Rafael Dos Anjos, who's one of the BMFs really in the UFC, if he can get a fight like that, that guy accepts everybody, it'll help him. But right now, title picture, not just yet.
Yeah, I agree, man. Who wants to be on the other end of one of those body triangles? Holy cow. All right, how about you guys? Too soon or spot on for Grant Dawson?
A little bit of both, but I would probably lean more towards too soon if we're talking title. The kid's got a good head on his shoulders. He's really exciting. I know this fight was a little different. You know, if you're not going to get that finish, then you have to dominate. And, you know, I was looking at one of the comments in the chat from FaZe. He says, I'm shocked at how it played out. I was too. Round by round, I kept thinking he can't possibly do this again another round. But Grant Dawson is still kind of showing us new wrinkles in his game. If you look at his streak and you look at the type of fighters he's fought, he's seen different puzzles. He's seen different types of fighters, and he's getting it done. But what he does need is that signature win, right? And you need a person like kind of like a Beneil Dariush, you know, someone like that, where the UFC can even look at it as, all right, well, if Grant Dawson wins, then we have kind of a new player here at the top, outside looking in. If Beneil Dariush wins, then he's right back in that mix, which is something you want. So I think a matchup like that would be big. And at the same time, Grant Dawson can show us that not only can he win fights, but he can kind of contend for that seat at the table and the big piece of chicken, right? This dude, I'm telling you, in the cage, he's got the skills. On the mic, he's got some skills. I think he can go a long way, but I think it's going to be a minute before we see him, which is unfortunate because that's a long streak to have in a killer division. That next opponent, whoever it is, it's got to be a big name.
Yeah, and the only reason I guess I was kind of pleading a case was I saw some similarities between him and Makhachev. Makhachev didn't really take out a top 5 on the way in, respect to Bobby Green and Dan Hooker, but they're a little bit further down, and he manhandled them, and next thing you know, he was there. And so going with what you said goes, you know, is he the lightweight boogeyman? And people are they going to want to avoid him? You two, Pada and you, came up with 2 great names that I would focus on, like a RDA or a Beneil that won't turn the fight down and maybe see it as a challenge to go on the ground. But that ground game is insane. I mean, great stuff there by Kenny to show him getting takedowns, putting them down in the middle, not slamming them and maybe having the bodies rotate a little bit too much so that he finds himself in a precarious situation like Chandler and Poirier round 3, if you guys will recall. This guy's got a really, really nice fighter IQ. I think he's going to get the champion's attention, to tell you the truth. So how about you, Danny? Too soon or spot on for Grant Dawson?
I agree with what Farah and Ghost have been saying. He's clearly a stud. He is one of the biggest interesting contenders right now, I would say, like rising contenders. Certainly, he's not at that level yet where we can be talking about him against the champion. I think we're quite far from that. But this is a guy to keep an eye on, because in a win or 2 from now, I think he's going to be knocking on the door of a title shot, and he might be now in conversations of a title eliminator bout or something like that. But we do need to see him against better opposition, specifically more name value, more experienced opposition. Like these names that he's been beaten, they're good, they're solid, but it's time that he gets a name that has a little bit more prestige in the division. I love the Beneil Dariush and Rafael Dos Anjos options. I think those are great. I interviewed Dawson maybe like a couple months ago, and he had actually told me one of his favorite fighters of all time and his dream matchup. No, it's not Conor. No, it's not Poirier. No, it's not Khabib. It's actually Rafael Dos Anjos, believe it or not. So wow. I think a fight with Rafael Dos Anjos makes all the sense in the world. Rafael Dos Anjos has no problem taking these type of fights either. So I think that's the move. And then from then, depending on how he looks against somebody that's held the title before, then we can have this conversation again, but a bit too early in my opinion, if circling back to the question.
Hey, but we can't hate on the fact that he's asking for it. I think that's what you have to do, right? If you're a fighter, you got to stick out, because look, guys, we're on what, question number 2 here. guys, we're going to get to International Fight Week, and everything that happened last week is going to get forgotten about. There's just too much going on from week to week. So if you're a fighter, you have to say these type of things. You have to stick out, especially in these lighter weight divisions where there's just so many fighters. I don't blame them for saying it, but I agree with my colleagues. It's maybe a little too soon.
Fair enough. All right. Moving on here. So a lot of buzz throughout the day and night or afternoon, whatever you want to call it, wherever you were on Saturday at the Apex. This UFC on ESPN 47 card was fun. Who was your breakout fighter of the night is what I want to know. We'll keep it simple. It's a simple question. We'll start with you.
I can't say enough about Michael Morales, man. He's young. He's exciting. He gets the job done, and there's no way around it. Like, if you look at Max Griffin, that's a tough out, man. That's a veteran, a guy that gives a lot of people troubles. And in my opinion, he won the first round. You know, you look at Morales' eye, a lot of fighters, young fighters, we've seen this movie before. Something like this happens, and they start to crumble little by little, right? They don't hear their corners. They don't understand what's going on. But this dude fought back, won round 2, and even in round 3, you could kind of look at it like Max had his moments too in round 3. He didn't just go away. It was a really good performance for him in the sense that he not only showed us, keeping that O on his record, which is such a big deal, but he showed us that he could fight through adversity. And I think sometimes it's tough for fighters. They find that out a little later in their career. He got the job done early. And look, I speak Spanish, so I understand what he's saying. If this guy can pick up a little bit of English, I'm telling you, he's very, very funny, very charismatic. I think a lot of people would like this kid, and I think he can go a long way in the sport.
Ecuador in the house and fighting out of the Entram gym in Tijuana, Mexico. And for those that don't know, his mom and dad, both black belts in judo. It was referenced on the broadcast, the lineage that he has, both parents being professional athletes. That's a good one, Goes. I like that one. All right, how about Danny? Who was your breakout fighter at UFC on ESPN 47?
I'm going to go with Tiburao, Joanderson Brito. Man, he looked good. I'm going to go out there and make a bit of a hot claim. I'll say he's the best featherweight currently not ranked. I mean, can you name somebody else? Please go ahead if the panel has any idea. But I do think he's the best featherweight out there sitting outside of the rankings. And I'm looking at the rankings right now, and at least in the top 15, which is Evloev, Sadiq Youssef, Bryce Mitchell, Dan Ige, Edson Barbosa, and Alex Caceres. Man, all those fights are certainly competitive, and in several of those, I'd actually favor Brito. I do think that he's bound to enter the rankings pretty soon. I think that he's an excellent fighter, and he's going to be very, very tough to beat. He's strong. He's got a good wrestling and jiu-jitsu and grappling base. He hits hard. I think this guy's onto something, and I think in the future we're going to see him in some pretty big fights. So, I just wanted to highlight him. Also, great shout by Goes with Michael Morales, undefeated prospect. I think he's onto something big as well. But keep your eyes on Brito. He might not be like the biggest star media-wise and all that and attention-wise, but skill-wise, he's a great fighter. And, again, I'm sure he's going to be in some interesting conversations in the future in regards to like big bouts and title contention and whatnot.
Danny, you got to set it up. A spinning back click in Espanol. We can have Michael Morales in there. We can have a cool panel.
Yeah.
Fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Good idea. All right. Now, Fada, there's no shortage of them. How about you? I know you're going to come up with a good one. There was a lot of breakout stars.
Yeah, I feel like there's no wrong answer, especially with this particular card. And I'm gonna go with Benoit Saint-Denis. He fought at welterweight short notice in his UFC debut. He showed a lot of toughness against Eliseo Capoeira. Didn't go his way, but moved down to lightweight, and he has looked really, really good. Bonfim was coming in with a lot of hype, obviously, from his flying knee knockout against Terrence McKinney. But he's looking so well-rounded. He's sharp. He's only 27. I think he can get the French. Hopefully, he can make that quick turnaround in Paris. He can get that market behind him. I think he has a lot of makings to be one of the stars in European MMA. I think they could use one right now because we've seen a lot of guys with hype and not everybody going through with it. I think he's well-rounded and tough enough to live up to that potential. He looks really, really good. And I just think I think he'll be a player. Again, he's at lightweight. It's a very tough division to break into. We were just talking about Grant Dawson, but we've seen a lot of kind of exciting names in the past couple of years. The Armin Sarukians, now the Grant Dawsons, or Mateus Gamrot. You can add Benoit Saint-Denis. I think he's at that level to be competing, the top 20, top 15 of the lightweight division. I'd like to see him get a big step up in competition next. Maybe he won't get a ranked opponent, but somebody floating between 15 and 20 in the top 20 of the lightweight. And I think he'll go far. I think he has a lot of potential.
I love it. That was a good one as well. I mean, there was a lot of them, and we could probably go around the horn one more time if we wanted to. I just got to give some love to Elvis. He was in the building. Elvis Brenner. When that fight started, guys, it looked like, oh man, fighting a boy. Because Brenner's he has nice skin, and he had the white hair, the blonde hair look that the shoot box team's always sporting. He just looked like he was gonna get mauled at some point. And Durham, of course, tough looking dude, man. And that dude hung in there and fought and fought and fought. I really love that fight. So mine goes to Elvis. Body, you telling me you got another one?
I feel like it's criminal if we don't shout out Rinat Fakhnedinov. The only reason, I picked Benoit Saint-Denis because I've actually covered, I've watched his fights when he was under the Brave Combat Federation banner, because they do a lot of shows in the Middle East. So I'm aware of him, and I've kind of seen his rise, and I like to cover that area. But Rinat definitely needs a shot. He's on a 20 plus something winning streak. Finished Kevin Lee really, really fast. Has a win over Brian Battle, who's looked good in the octagon lately. So definitely he deserves a shout, and definitely he's a guy that I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he became a legit contender. So I feel like we just had to talk about him at some capacity. So I'm telling you, this card had a lot. Everybody's pick was great. It's one of those cards that was kind of highlighted the future of the sport. That's why it was really great.
Yeah, we need we need it, right? Don't we need it? Because when you guys think about it, like some of these superstars that are leaving the sport, I don't know that we're really replacing them. Like we're replacing them with solid fighters, but I don't know that we're getting back superstars. And some of these fighters on this card did show a few signs here and there of maybe being something very big in the future. But I do feel like we need to keep this momentum going, man, because there are some big names walking away from the sport.
And goes further to that, they also did their due diligence. Danny, was Brito that was hollering at Dan Ige, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I really like that call out. He's got Ige's attention. He was responding. And then Saint-Denis, I think, was trying to match up with Gamrot. He threw out maybe Fiziev for the Paris-France card. So he was using his English and an upcoming card. Brito might not have the English, but he threw out a name. They were connecting the dots. And when you do it on big ESPN, I mean, that thing can take off, So shout out to all those fighters that not only fought well, they also did, they also brought it in the post-fight interview. I really, really enjoyed that aspect. I think there's one more out there, too, that we're leaving out. Nursultan, the guy that beat the undefeated Brazilian guy, Bruno Ferreira, he was legit as well, So keep an eye on all these fighters. It was really, really a fun card. There seems to be a little bit of a pushback here in the chat. And if it isn't, then maybe it's just me starting shit. I like to do that. But M in the chat says, Lerone Murphy and Jonathan Pierce have better resumes than Brito so far. However, Brito is wildly entertaining. I think he's talking to you, Danny. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, those are solid names. I think Jonathan Pierce at one point was ranked. So, that one's a tough one because he had an injury. He was supposed to fight. Who was he supposed to fight? He was supposed to fight soon. He had to pull out.
Bryce Mitchell, no?
I think it might have been Bryce. Yeah, that would have been his big fight. But I think at some point what he was ranked is just he got injured and then he got bumped out of the rankings. So it's kind of a tough one with him. But with Lerone Murphy, I don't know, man. I'd pick Brito to beat him.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one, but
yeah, no, those are all great up and comers. Sky V's and El Daddy says that was shocking, especially after Tejeda KO'd RoboCop. That's true. It's like you steal somebody's momentum when you have a performance like that. Guys, one thing I'm noticing, I'm going to try and keep up with the comments, but at the end, we might have some time today. So I'll go back to some of the original topics, and maybe we'll bring in some of those questions. So feel free to copy paste and then bring it towards the end of the show, because I saw some good ones, but we had moved on. And this is one thing I ask of you guys, since we're halfway through the show, hit a like on this YouTube channel of ours. We bring tons of great content to you every day. And just like I think it was FaZe, he was saying, man, I'm addicted to the UFC. Well, guess what? That's why it's MMA Junkie. Get it? Junkie. And so not only do we bring UFC Bare Knuckle too. I was gonna say Bellator, PFL. We got you covered if you're addicted to MMA. But yes, we have a lot of UFC content. So subscribe and like, and also hit that little bell so you'll know when shows like this, the popular SVC show, live Mondays, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, every Monday. You'll know when we're live, and you can join us for all of the fun. All right, let's continue here. The next topic is Alexander Volkanovski and Brandon Moreno. Will they defend their titles this weekend? So they're undisputed champions. I know Yair's a champ too, respect. But the two undisputed champions, I want to know, are they going to go 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2? Explain. Danny, go first.
Ah, man, this is such a tough one. It hurts to say, but I'm going to go that the champions are going to go 2-0. I think Moreno is vastly a different fighter than the one from 2018. Heck, in 2018, after he lost to Pantoja, he was cut from the UFC. And now he's champion. So just to kind of put things into perspective, what kind of version Pantoja fought back then. Also, keep in mind, Pantoja has gone a lot better as well. But I just think that Moreno hasn't just improved. He's changed. He's a completely different fighter. He's just so much better. His boxing is, just levels of what it used to be, and then his grappling has always been sharp. So I'm pretty confident in picking Moreno, although Pantoja, you do gotta give him a chance there. And then for the main event, I love Yair. I do think he is the biggest threat to Volkanovski. I do think that he's the most dangerous fighter Volkanovski has ever faced up to this point. I mean, the amount of danger that Yair presents in a fight, both standing on the ground, is ridiculous. And with that in mind, he can beat just about anybody, really. He has a good chance against anyone. But Volkanovski is the pound for pound best, or at least number 2 if you want to put John Jones as number 1 now that he's back. And he hasn't really given me any reason why to doubt him, right? Like, he's just been that good. So at 145, it's hard to beat Volkanovski. So I'm going to pick Volkanovski on that one. So I think the champs go 2-0.
Danny, coming right back to you, I got a question for you. Who's got the better kicking game? And I know that sounds ridiculous because Yair has an array of kicks, but Volk knows how to chop down the leg, and he sticks to it. Whose kicking game you like better?
No debate, George. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm not going to even let you finish that question. It is Yair Rodriguez. I mean, there's nobody better at kicking than him. Nobody. He can kick your head off. He can kick the hell out of your body, your legs. Really, just pick a part of the body, and he can target it. His kicking game is so disgusting. It is just dangerous. That's the word. It's just nasty. It's mean. It's brutal. I mean, look at what he did at Max Holloway. We're looking at it right now. At that time, Max Holloway came in with beautiful performances, specifically speaking to the one against Kelvin Kattar. At that time, self-proclaimed best boxer, best striker in MMA. And a lot of people were saying that he went in there against Yair Rodriguez and turned into a wrestler. If it wasn't because of the wrestling, likely Max Holloway would have lost that fight, because on the feet, Yair was, I think, in my opinion, was getting the better of him. And even if Holloway would have eked out a decision win on the feet, still, just the fact that you turned one of the best strikers in the history of MMA into a wrestler, that has to speak volumes into what kind of damage you're doing with those kicks. So yes, the kicking game for Yair is just out of this world, and that could play a big part on Saturday. We'll see. Volkanovski is short. Yair has no problem getting, his foot up there in sort of the head kick range. So we could very well see a crazy upset. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But again, I gotta go with the GOAT. I gotta go with the GOAT.
Right.
I'm gonna
George, we have an extra bedroom here, right? So we
Yes.
can offer
Yes,
Danny to hide from Edson Barbosa. Because if Edson Barbosa hears you say what you just said, you're gonna have to move here. You're gonna have to live with us, Danny.
See, but the thing is that Edson Barbosa is a very traditional striker. Like, his kicks can be timed. His kicks can be a little bit more predictable. Very technical guy, kicks hard as hell. Don't get me wrong. But like, Yair can just kick your head off in a split second. I mean, even from the bottom, like, his up kicks are pretty brutal as well. Like, if we're talking about unpredictability, what poses more danger? People have figured out Edson Barbosa. Yair Rodriguez, as long as that man has a heartbeat, he's going to be a threat to taking you out.
If it happens on the street, can you imagine Yair Rodriguez? Have you ever seen some of the boots that he wears?
Oh, yeah.
I think, like, in Roadhouse, the guy with that boot, I'd rather deal with him than Yair Rodriguez.
Nice old school pull goes. But let me just say this. I'll take that one on the chin. It probably was a ridiculous question, but Volk's kicking game has gotten better. He knows how to finish his combos with kicks, so he may want to, throw some himself to nullify the movement of Yair Rodriguez. And that's not the most ridiculous thing you'll ever hear when it comes to that, guys. I'll tell you a quick story because we had time today. When Goz and I were hosting Junkie Radio, a guy named Mahmoud from San Diego called in. He goes, "Hey, guess what? In the this was for the Mendez Aldo fight. He goes, the kicks are going to make a difference." And we're like, "Yeah, man, Aldo's got some great kicks." He goes, No. He goes, "Chad Mendez, he has better kicks." And we all laughed our ass off. I think we went to a commercial because we couldn't talk anymore. We were laughing so hard. And guess what? Mendez outkicked the son of a bitch in that second fight. Still lost, but he was actually bringing the kicks, man. So anything can happen in this sport. They all evolve, and that's what makes this so interesting. Shout out to Ahmad, one of our best listeners ever on the Junkie Radio run. Go ahead, Danny.
I just got to set the record straight because I don't want to get in hot waters and then have, people at USA Today thinking I'm drinking on the job. This is Cuban coffee. This is coladita, typical here to Miami, which is served in a very, very small cup because if you drink a lot of this, it's probably not good for your heart. So I am sipping on some hardcore Cuban jet fuel coffee. All right, I'm not drinking on the job for those saying comments that Danny's taking shots. Come on, I'm trying to bring the energy here, not the alcohol levels.
Yeah, and that's Lipton iced tea back there too, just so you guys know.
Nice stuff, guys. All right. Yeah, I'm lost here. Who's next? Did we cover? Oh, yeah. We're on 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. Next up is Fada.
Yeah, so I just find it tough to bet against Alexander Volkanovski at this point. I mean, he's so well-rounded. He's got such good fight IQ as well. And I think the strategy for him, not that it's going to be easy because Yair is so wild and closing that gap is going to be tough. But I think the strategy here is he's going to try and take him down and just put heavy ground and pound. I know a lot of people point to the Frankie Edgar loss that Yair had. That was such a long time ago. But Yair has a tendency to get taken down. It's also because he's quite comfortable off of his back. We just saw him submit Josh Emmett with a triangle choke. Now, I think Volkanovski, that's going to be his strategy here. Like I said, he's got a good fight IQ. He's got long arms as well. He's got a good reach. So that's why, when we saw him fight Max Holloway, he was able to get into the inside as well. I know he's quite short for the division, but his long arms help him a lot in terms of the grappling and striking. I see him try to take this fight to the ground. He just has to be wary with Yair. He's just got to have to be on his P's and Q's the entire 25 minutes does Alexander Volkanovski, because Yair, the knees, the leg kicks, the switch kicks, he's just so wild and dangerous. And it's like when we saw I don't necessarily see this fight going similar to the Brian Ortega in the sense of it being that dominant, but Brian Ortega is one of those guys as well where you just have to be careful throughout the entire fight. And we saw the way he whipped up that guillotine was insane. He did it so quickly. So Yair kind of reminds me of Ortega in the sense in the featherweight division. Those are the two guys that you just can't slip up against because they're so dangerous. Yair showed us that he can finish by knockout or submission. So I think I'm picking Volkanovski to win. I just think he has to be very wary. And I don't think he's underestimating him. I've listened to a few interviews. Doesn't seem like actually interesting. Eugene Behrman was saying, he named Yair as his toughest challenge. And then Joe Lopez, who's obviously been Volkanovski's longtime coach, said he sees it going similar to the Frankie Edgar fight, where he's just going to bash him on the ground. So it kind of tells me where this fight is probably going to go, but it's just so hard to bet against Volkanovski. His fight IQ, he's so well-rounded. He's so composed, shows us he has the cardio to go all day. He's just got to be wary of Yair's wild attacks. In terms of Moreno and Pantoja, I initially picked Moreno, but I don't know. After speaking to Pantoja, he just sounds so confident. Now, I don't know if that's making me sway towards him or make me think, that he's underestimating Moreno because he was talking about how he wants to dominate him, Habib-style mauling. Now, I mean, Brandon Moreno has shown a lot of improvements in his ground game. He's not just a striker. And for me, when is the last time, if ever, has Pantoja fought 5 rounds? I don't think in the UFC, maybe pre-UFC, I don't know. But regardless if it's pre-UFC, it was a very, very long time ago. So that's kind of why I'm going to lean towards Moreno. The 25 minutes, the experience, the cardio, because they're going to push a strong pace. Pantoja, they're both so well-rounded as well. Pantoja's probably going to try to get him to the ground and submit him. Moreno won't be so easy to do that. He's going to fend him off. There's going to be a lot of scrambles and grappling and clinching that's going to tire and wear on both men, really. But for that reason, just I feel like I'll give the cardio edge to Moreno just because of the experience and why I'd pick him. But I think it's going to be a very close fight. I could be wrong, but I see it being a super close fight. But give the edge to Moreno, but I wouldn't be entirely shocked if Pantoja won.
And Fada, let's not forget what Teddy Atlas said that I think kind of caught on. It was about 6 months ago, a year ago. He said, when you're champ, you just get 30% better. And I think a lot of it comes from here and confidence, because you're right. 0-2, Pantoja should feel that way. Like he's got something up his sleeve. You know what I mean? He's had this guy's number, but at the same time, he's not even the favorite going in.
Yeah, and he outstruck him in that fight in Chile. Like it was like one of the scorecards was 30-26, but then again it was 20-18. You know what I mean? So, but I just think they're very evenly matched. It's just their strategies will probably differ. I expect Pantoja to try to get his back. He does that in a lot of his fights where he just wants to get someone's back and choke him out, and he has the ability to do that. It's just a game of inches, but. Because it's 5 rounds, I'm going to lean towards Moreno. But again, I'm not going to be that surprised if Pantoja wins.
All right. How about you guys? 2-0, 1-1, 0-2, or 1-0 because one of the fights goes to a no contest. Just kidding. I don't want to jinx it. Go ahead.
I'm going to go 1-1. Look, guys, MMA underdogs have been bringing it as of late. You can't count anyone out, right? I mean, look at our champions, right? Aljamain Sterling. How many times have we said, oh, this is the guy that's going to get him, and it just doesn't happen? Alexa Grasso's champion over Valentina Shevchenko. Big fight. Leon Edwards, you telling me he didn't stand up to the occasion, rise up? I mean, dude, MMA underdogs have been on fire. So I think one of these guys can get it done. I like Yair Rodriguez. I think he's tough. His attack can come from many, many angles, and sometimes Volkanovski can get a little sloppy out there. He can get a little too aggressive, but it's because he's that good. So that particular matchup, I feel like there are moments that maybe Yair can surprise us. Maybe like Danny was saying, one of them crazy kicks that lands in the right spot. And I don't even want to call him crazy, you know what? Because that dude really does work on his technique and he knows what he's doing. That could happen. If you look at Moreno and Pantoja, I think there's just more of a recipe for the upset there. And I call it an upset, but Pantoja's already done it twice, right? There's got to be something to standing in front of the guy in front of you, knowing that person has 2 wins over you, no matter how confident you are. And man, AI is out of control. I don't know how Kenny got Danny's head on Pantoja's body, but that's insane. But having those 2 guys in front of you like that, or a guy in front of you that has 2 wins, holy crap, man. Like, it's got to do something to you, no matter how much you've improved. Brandon Moreno, though, he is improving with every fight. And I think it will be a good scrap, and I think it will go the distance. If I had to pick an upset out of the 2 to make the 1-1 make sense, it'd probably be Pantoja. But, man, now I hope I might have to move in with Danny. I don't want to run into Brandon on the streets here.
He literally lives 5 minutes away, too.
I know.
That one's a possibility. Although at Barbosa's down in Sofa, like Danny.
I got to watch out.
I think it goes Volk wins. By the way, guys, here are the odds. This is crazy. Volkanovski minus 420, Rodriguez plus 320. That seems too far apart for how well Rodriguez has been fighting as of late. And then Moreno minus 200, Pantoja plus 170. This is all courtesy of Caesar's odds. I do think Volk hangs on to his title, but I think Yair's live, and I think Yair will have some moments because he really has strikes that come from so many different angles. But I think Pantoja might do it. I think Pantoja might do it. There's something to having somebody's number. I think Pantoja, look, Moreno's never been finished, nor on the feet, nor submitted. But Pantoja, I think he's got a body triangle. He's got an attack. You know what I mean? And he really developed his striking arsenal, much like Verdum and RDA did when they were just jiu-jitsu guys. And then all of a sudden they became world champs. It's because they added those tools and then blended the two. So I really, really salute him. So I think 1-1 because of that. I hope I'm wrong, though, because I'd love to see Moreno on the September 16th card along with Alexa Grasso. Potter, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Pantoja submitted Moreno in the Tough House. It just doesn't count. Yeah.
That's true.
Very long time ago, though. Both fights were a very long time ago. But like Danny said earlier, Pantoja has improved a lot as well. So I just think it's a very evenly matched fight. And I think they will be super close is what I predict. And I wouldn't be surprised if these guys fought again down the line. I mean, I know we don't want to see quadrilogies or whatever again, but I mean, I think it's going to be a fun one.
George, real quick,
ahead,
and then you can use this into segue, I think, into the next topic. But what are the odds for Whittaker, Dricus Du Plessis?
I got it right here. Courtesy of Caesars, minus 380 for Robert Whittaker. Oh my God, you're not going to go there, are you, Danny? Plus
You're telling me
DDP. I haven't met anyone
that
likes
Jair
DDP.
has less of a chance at beating Volkanovski than Dricus Du Plessis has Robert Whittaker.
No, I think Yair has a better chance to beat Volkanovski than DDP has to beating.
Well, no, I'm just saying according to the odds.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
They're off. They're off.
That's
Yair shouldn't be that big of an underdog, in my opinion.
It's ridiculous.
I did say I'd never go against Volk again. He taught me a lesson a few times, so I'm not going against him. But Yair fought well against Emmett, guys. He's been fighting well the last few years, and that's why I know this is going to be a great fight. But all right, good stuff. Last topic. Can you think of a fighter that's been more written off than Dricus Du Plessis going into a pivotal matchup? This wasn't a popular booking for many reasons, but what was the biggest fumble here in that fight booking? Because a lot has been said, guys, over why this happened. In fact, I think on previous spinning back clicks, we all kept thinking it would fall apart and not happen just because Izzy warmed up to it eventually. All right, going first on this one, I believe, is Para.
Well, I mean, it was Chael Sonnen, I think, that said, let's just scrap this matchup. First of all, kudos to Robert Whittaker. Kudos for Robert Whittaker for taking this fight. I talk about a lot of guys who are in the upper echelon division that don't really like to give a chance for rising contenders. If you look at Dricus's resume, he's finishing fights, I think, minus Brad Tavares. It makes sense for him to get the step up in competition. So I'm not that mad. I think it's a matter of just Whittaker is so good and he's kind of beaten everybody. I think he's beaten everybody outside of Israel Adesanya at middleweight. So I'm not entirely mad. We've seen worse. We've seen guys who have gotten opportunities off of much less than what Dricus Du Plessis has done. I mean, he's finished Darren Till and Derek Brunson. Brunson's a perennial contender. He's a guy that a lot of people have gotten big opportunity off of beating. So I'm not that mad at the situation. It's just timing wise, it just didn't fall into place because Adesanya wants to fight in Sydney. He needs fresh blood. That's what he's been harping on about time and time again. Alex Pereira came as a nice gift in the sense of the storyline, the name. He got to have this amazing chapter of his career with Alex Pereira, who came from kickboxing, but he's looking for fresh blood. And if Dricus Du Plessis can beat Robert Whittaker, there's no argument that he shouldn't get it just because Whittaker is that damn good. So yeah, did they fumble? Maybe a little bit, because if Whittaker wins, then you've got that or Sean Strickland as options. And Adesanya just doesn't seem that motivated to fight Whittaker. Whittaker believes he won the rematch and he believes that he can beat Adesanya in a trilogy. Adesanya's just not getting that excited. But Adesanya, credit to him, he's fought the next man up throughout his career. He's been one of those champions. He fought Marvin Vettori. I'm sure he wasn't that motivated to rematch Marvin Vettori either, but he fought Marvin Vettori, fought Jared Cannonier. He's been a very active champion. And I think there's a storyline there as well. They're going to fight in Sydney if Whittaker wins. But again, it's all a timing game, in my opinion. Du Plessis doing all the right things. Can't fault him. There's a storyline there with Israel Adesanya. He just had no surgery. He's saying, I'm going to be completely different when it comes to my cardio, because that's been his biggest knock. He's a finisher. Outside of Brad Tavares, he's finished pretty much everybody. Let's see. I'm excited to see the way it plays out. I don't know if you even asked who I'm picking, but I'm picking Whittaker. But, I don't see Du Plessis as like this unworthy challenger for Whittaker at all, is what I'm trying to say.
Got it. All right. So it goes, you know how it goes. This fight, nobody wanted it, but we're here and we're going to enjoy it one way or another. So, but I still want to know, what do you think was the biggest fumble here? Should they have reserved the two Africans for Africa, where they're building a PI, where they're saying they want to have a fight card at some point? Is it too soon to Sydney, where it's not going to make sense, and maybe Strickland does become that bailout for Izzy, fresh matchup as well? What do you think was the biggest fumble here?
Well, to answer your first question, I think I don't remember a lot of people having Juliana Pena betting slips the night she fought Amanda Nunes, right? So that one probably to me is more of somebody getting counted out. In this particular fight, I mean, I think the biggest fumble was just boxing themselves into that fight. Possibly Robert Whittaker again fighting Israel Adesanya. Like we kind of alluded to this earlier in the show, rematches, and to get into a third one. Don't forget, like there is a possibility. I can't remember who said it in the chat, but somebody said they think Robert Whittaker would win, and it's not out of this world. Robert Whittaker is a fantastic fighter, and he's given Israel Adesanya trouble in some of the fights. He could win, and then what? We got to see this a fourth time. I mean, and what if he wins again? Are we gonna have to see it a fifth time? Like, dude, this can get out of control. I don't know why the UFC fumbled the ball. At the same time, I mean, this isn't their first rodeo. They know what they're doing. There's got to be some kind of reason that makes sense. I just wish they would come out and say it so that we would all shut up. Because for us, outside looking in, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are different avenues that we could have had this all play out, and I think the fans would have been happy with it. But the possibility of seeing them fight a third time kind of soon, you know, it just feels like it wasn't that long ago that they fought. I think that was the biggest fumble.
All right. How about you, Danny? What was the biggest fumble in this whole mess at middleweight?
Yeah, just the fact that they didn't make Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, that is one of the biggest fumbles this year, right? Probably the biggest, obviously, John Jones and Ngannou, right? No doubt about that. But this has to be top 5. I don't have a list, but I would assume it has to be there because it was just so obvious. I mean, you got bad blood. You got beef between the champion and Du Plessis. You got a storyline. You got two people from Africa where you can, you know, host an event or at least, you know, make it like a theme, right? Like we see the September 16th show for Mexican Independence Day. It's going to be in Vegas, not going to be in Mexico, but still they're honoring Mexico and making the card Mexican theme and doing it on a Mexican date. They could have done that the same thing maybe for something with surrounding Africa. I'm not very familiar with holidays and whatnot, but they could have made it an African theme card with other African fighters. And again, Israel Adesanya was ready to come back after his last title defense. He's like, yo, put me in July. Like I'm ready to go back in there. I'm down to be active. This fight was a no-brainer. But yet again, the UFC are putting themselves in a position where Whittaker might just be the most deserving guy again. And for me personally, I would love to see that fight. It was very close the last time out. And I do think that Whittaker has a chance, believe it or not, even though he's 0-2 against the champion, to dethroning Israel Adesanya. But that's me personally. I've seen online a lot of fatigue about just instant rematches and these fights, you know, going back to back. So I can see them having a tough time maybe selling that fight for a third time when that could have been easily avoidable, or at least they could have put a buffer long enough to whereas that fight maybe, you know, in 6 more months or maybe a year would have seemed a little bit more fresh or a little bit more sense. Whereas this, you know, it kind of seems like, again, you know, they're putting themselves in a situation that they didn't have to be in. So yeah, that's the biggest fumble of them all. Dricus Du Plessis versus Adesanya was a no-brainer from any angle that you want to look at it.
I've watched a lot of sports in my life. Father, this comes to you, all right? You basically live in the continent of Africa. You have relatives on both sides of it. The World Cup was in 2010. Nigeria sends athletes to the NBA, the NFL, the EPL, English Premier League, and so do many other countries. And there's proper football leagues in all these places, which tells me there's stadiums. And of course, if you're building stadiums, you're building arenas. What do you think? Why isn't this fight happening in Africa? Like, what's the holdup that you might have heard or that we're all missing here?
I don't know if I've heard something specifically, but if you go back to the 2010 World Cup for football or soccer, the only 2 countries that got votes to host the World Cup were South Africa and Morocco. So obviously my bias will always want the UFC to come to Morocco. It just doesn't particularly make sense when you look at the roster. So I'd understand why the UFC wouldn't go there. But South Africa, on the other hand, considering that Dricus is from there and EFC, obviously the organization is there. But regardless of the country, whether it's Nigeria or Cameroon or wherever the UFC wants to go, they just got to build the infrastructure. Like you said, I mean, it's a matter of investing, that country investing in that and being interested to host that event. Now, if Dricus emerges and beats Robert Whittaker, and then we could be parties from there could be talking about wanting to make an event over there. I don't know where the UFC wants to go, because you want to cater to the champion, I guess, with Israel and go to Nigeria. But I don't know if Nigeria can host that. I know Kamaru Usman has an MMA league there, I believe. But I'm not sure if they're ready to host a UFC event. So that's the thing. So a lot of questions. I know the UFC are working on it. But I don't think, I mean, Adesanya wants to fight in Sydney right now. So I don't think this fight's going to happen after. There isn't enough time to make it happen. You would have to wait until next year and start planning for it specifically. So regardless, I think we're going to get robbed of that moment of us seeing it in Africa. Maybe down the line they could do something. But I wanted to make another point in terms of, I feel if Du Plessis got the title shot against Adesanya, here's the thing, because you'll get a lot of people who are going to be like, well, he doesn't deserve it, yada, yada, yada. But the fight against Robert Whittaker, in my eyes, it's undeniable if he beats him. It's just risky, because if he loses that fight, then it's kind of like a back of the line type of situation. But that's why Sean Strickland winning this past weekend was best case scenario for the UFC, because here's their plan B. So that's the way I look at it. But yeah, right now I don't see UFC Africa, that narrative, especially between Adesanya and Du Plessis. We're just not going to see it play out the way we want to, because it's not going to happen. Like, Adesanya wants to fight in Sydney, so UFC Africa is going to be put on the side right for now. It's just not going to happen with that particular fight, and that was the fight to make to debut the Africa event, especially with Ngannou gone.
Good stuff. I just thought of a fight, non-title, where we all wrote off one athlete versus the other. Like, what are you doing? This person's going to get served up, and it was recent. It's so good that you're all going to be speechless, and the only thing you guys are going to do is give me a fist bump. Peter Yan against Sean O'Malley. Come on, none of us gave O'Malley a chance, right? And I feel like Dricus Du Plessis is Sean O'Malley, and look what happened. Just one fist bump. Right.
I give you a half.
What's up with Danny? He doesn't like me today. He doesn't like my set. He's no fist bump. We got beef apparently. All right. Wait till Peru knocks out Colombia out of the next World Cup. All right, here we go with the additional.
That's deep. That hurt. That hurt.
You get to play matchmaker, guys. Replace Henry Cejudo, who was supposed to fight Marlon Vera at UFC 292 on August 19th. Vera called up Peter Yan. I got it. But I think bantamweight is so deep, we might have options. We got to make these quick, so you go first.
I think in these situations, you look for guys who want to rebound from a loss, right? Get back on track. If this were the lightweight division, a guy like Beneil Dariush would be a good example of somebody that just took a loss and wants to get right back in there and put their name in the hat. I think in this division, you'd have to look at a guy like Adrian Yanez, right? This is a guy who he ran into the best Rob Font we've seen in a while. Like, it was a freight train. And I think Adrian is a young fighter. He doesn't have to take that much time off in between fights. I think he wants to get in. He could maybe get in there, erase the memory of what we saw there with Rob Font. And, if he gets a win, he's right back on track. If he gets a loss, he's in no man's land. But look, at the end of the day, that fight, Vera's skill set, Yanez's skill set, I think it would be a lot of fun, and I think it could help both guys.
Danny, you in for Vera versus Yan, or do you have another option?
Yeah, I like that suggestion. It's a big name, somebody that's in a similar position, because Chito's coming off a pretty bad loss. On Yan's side, he's coming off 3 consecutive defeats. I think it makes sense where they're at in their career. It's kind of like a loser leaves town type of thing regarding the top 5. So I think that fight makes sense. I think his suggestion was on point.
Okay, how about you, Fada?
Well, if it's not Peter Yan, I think Pedro Munoz is not a bad option. That guy's fought everybody. He's one of the perennial contenders in the division. He's coming off of a win against Chris Gutierrez, so I know he had a bit of a skid prior to that, but I think he's a decent enough name in the division that would intrigue Marlon Vera if he can't get Peter Yan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I love it. By the way, Evan says in the chat, Yanez is such a fraud. LOL. Ooh, harsh.
Damn.
All right. Additional question number 2. Robbie Lawler fights this weekend. It's his last fight, he says. He's retiring. Daniel Cormier said he does not include Ruthless in his Mount Rushmore of welterweights. Agree or disagree, Danny?
Oh, man, that's such a tough one because I love Robbie Lawler, but I think agreed. Mount Rushmore's 4, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I had to go GSP, obviously, Matt Hughes, Kamaru Usman, and Tyron Woodley. If we're talking about the best champions at 170, the fighters that have done more in that weight class, I would say those 4. Yeah, I would put like Robbie Lawler maybe at number 5 or 6. He's right there.
And that's who DC said as well. That was his Mount Rushmore. How about you, Fada? Do you agree with DC or not?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's tough. Again, like Danny said, I love Robbie Lawler, and he's right there. I'd literally like put him 4B if that was even a thing. But yeah, I think you got to put those 4: GSP, Matt Hughes, Tyron Woodley, and Kamaru Usman. Not in that particular order, but just in general. But Robbie Lawler right there behind him. Maybe 1 or 2 more title defenses would have put him on that list. But yeah, I think it's tough. But those are the 4.
Okay. How about you guys?
I agree with DC. I think it's GSP, Kamaru, T Wood, and Matt Hughes. But Ruthless Robbie Lawler is on the outside. And I think one thing that he does kind of have to his benefit is the fact that he's been able to do this in different organizations, different rule sets, right? In Pride, Strikeforce. But it's all about title defenses. And even really when you look at the 4 that we just talked about, Matt Hughes, like I think he gets 2 taken away from him. One, because Hoist Gracie just didn't want 170, right? So that didn't count as a title defense. And I think that Carl Parisian fight too, right? Didn't that kind of...
Yeah, he got replaced by Joe Riggs, and Joe Riggs missed weight. So he lost out on having a title defense there as well. It was a non-title fight. Just like Anderson Silva, they do this reality show. Travis Luter, you win. And the guy doesn't make weight. So Silva missed out on that as well. These guys could have even higher numbers.
But that was his second time. So that was his second reign, no? Not his first reign. I think his first reign ended. I think BJ Penn ended it, and then that was you guys were talking about the second reign. So it wouldn't have been consecutive. Oh, so overall, yeah.
Crazy stuff, man. How about Edwards? Do you think if Leon Edwards is watching right now, do you think he's saying, "What about me, guys? I beat one of the guys you guys mentioned twice, though he only has 1 title defense." Kamaru Usman does have 5.
He just got to the dance. I'm not saying he can't get there at some point. Maybe we'll see. But he just got to the dance. I mean, he just completed his first title defense. We can't be talking about Mount Rushmore just yet.
He's putting his quarter on that screen though, and he's saying, "I'll see you soon," because that is big having those 2 wins.
Oh yeah.
M in the chat says Hughes has 5 title defenses. He's got 7, M, and he should have 9, like Goes explained. All right, if you guys have any questions, bring them on really, really fast. What's your favorite part of International Fight Week? Fada, you go first. We got the Hall of Fame. We got the fights itself, which probably is everyone's favorite. But there's lots of stuff going on. There's pool parties going on, power slap event going on, the special announcement about UFC Fight Pass. Is aside from the fights and the expo. Let's not forget the expo. So aside from the fights itself, what's your favorite part of International Fight Week?
I mean, I never get to experience it, so you guys would probably be better at answering that. The Hall of Fame is cool. That's a whole different debate if we're going to include what DC recently said about the likes of Jim Miller and stuff not being there. But I think that's cool in general because it just honors the fighter's career. It's a very emotional moment always for them. So it's just nice kind of celebrating different fighters' careers. But I mean, the fight card is great. I love the fight card, but I think you guys would be better candidates to answer since you guys have attended them before.
Goes?
I like the expo. I think it's really cool. Like when you think about all of the major sporting organizations, you're not going to get that much talent, that high level talent in one room where you can just walk up to them, shake their hands, take pictures with them. That doesn't happen. It's really cool to see younger kids and even with their fathers sometimes or their mothers being able to have those experiences and those conversations with these athletes that we can still communicate with, right? Like that's pretty cool. I don't know that you're going to be able to get to a Tom Brady or someone like that. So that's kind of fun for me to watch.
Danny?
I'm on the same boat with Fair. I've never been to one, so it's hard for me to say, but I do just like that they're kind of having just like a week for it, and between like the expo, the Hall of Fame, and all that, just a lot of news and interesting things happen usually. So usually it's just like a very interesting time to like be paying attention. Like if there's a week you got to pay attention to sort of the headlines and what's going on in the MMA news cycle, it's this week because I'm sure we're going to see a lot of stuff and there's always a surprise in there. So yeah, I would say that just what happens in MMA.
All right, Fada, I give you the last word. I did say leave a question and we'll get to it, but the show's almost over. So this is real quick. Pro Fights Info. Do you think Conor McGregor will fight Michael Chandler by at least March of 2023? You got 20 seconds.
I don't even know how to answer that. It feels like every day I'm writing different articles about like it's gonna happen, it's not gonna happen. This person believes it is. This person doesn't believe it will. Michael Chandler definitely believes it will, but how much longer is he gonna hold out until he decides like, okay, I just want to fight? It seems like long enough, but by March 2023, 60% that happens by March 2023. I'll say that.
Fair enough. All right, folks. if you like
2023, 2024. Sorry.
2024, yeah. Folks, if you like what you saw, please hit the like and please subscribe to the channel because we do this every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Keep it locked on not only this channel, but the website itself. We got excellent coverage of International Fight Week. We're going to be all over the place. So follow us and stay with us here at MMA Junkie, the best coverage of mixed martial arts in the business. We'll see you all next week when we do Spinning Back Clique again. And again, thank you all for tuning in. Go out and be a champion. We'll talk to you soon.